all the projection from the past for states of mind in whatever forms. Just use nothing within involvement or uninvolvement. However, the giving in the way of brightening, use these reminders. It will purify the overlaying in the blessing, in the brightening, in the plong. The result of the giving is unrealized by the beings. They can get out of their mind, but they cannot yet out from the getting out itself. However, use the reminders continuously as a purification. They will follow accordingly, because the essence has no grasping mind in it. Just continue to use the reminders in the blessing constantly, whether it is done or not, whether there is the grasping mind or it is over. Continue to bless. Continue to use the reminders as a purification as usual. Continuously. Use each sentence of the reminders as a purification constantly, whether it is over or not. Continue to bless. It will end all the worries, whether it is ending or not ending, over or not over. Whether it is over or not, blessing continues. Continue to bless with the great compassion as usual, without evaluation in the result of the blessing. The blessing is sacred in itself, in its purification through the extinction and the emptiness already as it is. There is no wasting time to evaluate the result. Samsara has great numbers. The blessing continues so long as samsara still exists. The conclusion at each time that it is given out as a purification, in itself it is absolute each time. Samsara is oneself, oneself is samsara. When we bless samsara, it is like this. Therefore, the absolute that is given, it is given the absolute for samsara. Absolute cutting through. It has to be meant for samsara. Oneself is samsara, so that there is no separation between samsara and oneself in all concerns and worries. In this case, in this matter, that which has nothing to do with involvement or uninvolvement. It has nothing to do with engagement or disengagement. Plong or awakening or brightening is the power to proceed in the blessing. It is the power of samabat that is uncountable. Awakening for samsara uncountably and constantly. This is the plong, the awakening uncountable awakening, the brightening, uncountable, uncountable brightening. Use the reminders so that Samsara will hear it. These terminologies have the foundation of the essence. The essence is in the terminology itself. That's why it is sacred. Therefore, use these reminders. They are the terminologies with the essence, the true essence. When you use them, they become absolute cutting, natural cutting. Terminologies that purify themselves have to be given simultaneously. Continue to use terminologies that purify themselves, because the infinite force of the extinction leaves no traces. We need to use terminologies to communicate. Whether we use it verbally or mentally, they are the communication that we need to use for all groups of beings with the true essence, through the great compassion. It is the power of absolute cutting. One sentence helps cut through deluded knowing for a whole samsara. And we use the same thing. This is enlightenment, not for grasping. Enlightenment is to be given. Whatever vow that one have set up in the past to grasp for the enlightenment will be removed naturally. Like the first Buddha, giving the mighty force from concentration, contemplation, mindfulness, special insights, and so on, until there is no grasping. In the past, there is no path for enlightenment. There is only giving everything from the attainment. At first, there is the grasping that is overlaying, but the giving is uncountable. Giving the contemplation, the mindfulness, concentration until it's so boring. Also giving the awakening, the total awakening, until no grasping for more awakening. Giving until it is purify all the belief values from the past to gain, to attain anything. This is all about giving uncountably. So proceed with the great compassion. Each sentence is the great compassion. All the projection to attain that is overlaying, we cannot conclude with not grasping. It has to be that which has nothing to do with grasping or not grasping. We have to clear out the meanings of the dualities. With just non-involvement alone is not okay, because there is no such one side. There is a duality. Therefore, if there is the attempt to liberate, You have to give the terminology of purification of that which has nothing to do with liberating or not liberating, letting go or not letting go. Let's not use only about letting go or not letting go. There is the projection for attainments from the past, for liberation, for non-attachments, but it is always grasping for liberation or not liberation. It is jumping from side to side. We have to purify both sides. That which has nothing to do with letting go or not letting go, involvement or not involvement, liberating or not liberating. This is the purification for the delusive attachment to dualities, to the belief values given to dualities, opinions and meanings. This is not about not grasping, because it's still stuck there. Not grasping for the non-grasping itself. It is not yet the great compassion, because it is still being specific, just to purify only within oneself, to not grasp for the non-grasping itself. So we have to use the terminology of that which has nothing to do with grasping or not grasping. When there is no option, it is balanced with samsara. Because the habits have been projecting for attachments and detachments, the same as renouncing. That which has nothing to do with renouncing or not renouncing, letting go or not letting go. That which has nothing to do with letting go or not letting go is ending all concerns with all about the attempt to letting go or not letting go, end all that habits. This is the great compassion. This is the conclusion that purifies itself, terminologies that purifies itself, opinions that purify themselves. You have to know which conclusion that is specific, which one that is helping samsara, which one that is tilting towards enlightenment only, towards liberation only, but not giving samsara with the enlightenment, with the liberation. We have to know which sentence that is given for samsara from the great compassion. It has to be liberation, and liberation as given for samsara simultaneously. Then it will not be only about liberation. Enlightenment and enlightenment for samsara simultaneously. Then it is not only being specific for the enlightenment. The essence has to be given, creating Buddha land within the samsara simultaneously. And when there is the conclusion, there is also the outcome. Appreciation for the outcome, then it has to be concluded as a purification for that appreciation at the same time. If there is the liberation as an outcome, use the conclusion at the same time so that there is no stuckness in that process or that steps of appreciation of the outcome, of the result, of the conclusion. Use it as usual for the blessing. Use it for purification for samsara. As samsara still remain great numbers here. Samsara will follow with great blessed fortune to bless accordingly as well. If we just give the liberation, then they will stuck with just liberation. If we just giving them the letting go and the putting down, they will stuck only there with the letting go and the putting down. There is no blessing. They cannot bless. So it's subjected to how and what we give. If we give with just liberation of suffering, then they will be just there with liberation of suffering. We have to refine our blessing, giving the great compassion right away, ending simultaneously, helping through ending simultaneously. Liberation, enlightenment is to be given simultaneously, not just being specific. This is the great compassion, and giving the great blessed fortune of the great compassion to all beings simultaneously. Not only about liberation or enlightenment, that which has nothing to do with letting go or not letting go, engaging or disengaging, renouncing or not renouncing. Use it in any circumstances, any situations. Letting go of emotions and feelings or symptoms. Simultaneously use everything is from that which has nothing to do with letting go or not letting go. Proceeding like this simultaneously with everything, with these terminologies. Everything is by the blessing, by the giving. You can use any terminology, any sentences. They are all sacred. Just think of them and proceed with samsara and everything simultaneously. This is the conclusion that is made altogether simultaneously with everything. When we proceed the great compassion, we need to use the reminders to purify simultaneously. Otherwise, it will not stimulate the power of unwinding altogether. The beings need to hear the terminologies all the same. Because if they don't hear it, they cannot proceed accordingly. The essence in terminologies are sacred in the way that it is absolute, cutting through. So the beings will receive the great blessed fortune of cutting through accordingly. Absolute cut through accordingly. Enlightenment and giving enlightenment is simultaneously given. That which has nothing to do with liberating or not liberating, simultaneously with everything proceeding. The non-humans are quite quickly open because there is something that they can see through. They can realize what's happening quickly. If you can see, then you have to purify the seeing with the conclusion. The terminology is given. And the humans have to listen. They are subjected to listening. Humans or non-humans have the seer also, all the same. With the conclusion, the seeing will purify the seeing itself simultaneously.